I remember I was quite young at the time. I didn't have kids, but I remember that it was really difficult for them at that time to kind of negotiate what their childcare would look like, how they could change their lives and still work to support their families.
Welcome to the Feminist Philosophy Podcast, where we unpack big questions at the intersection of gender, identity, and lived experience. I'm your host, Hajar Al Khouzaii. Today, we're diving into a question that follows many women through their lives and careers. Can you really have it all? From motherhood to academic success, community care to personal ambition, this phrase has become both a rallying cry and a heavy burden. I'm joined by Dr. Amanda Williams, a communication professor at Mount Royal University. She is a wife, a mother, and a woman navigating many intersecting roles. Together, we'll explore what having it all really means, who gets to define it, who pays the cost, and whether balance is something we should strive for or question altogether. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. I'll dive right in. What does having it all mean to you personally?
Well, I always worry when people say having it all. I think it sets you up really to feel like there isn't all, and I think we're always destined, if we think we've reached something, to be disappointed. But I do think for me, when I look at the moments where I feel calmest and happiest and like I'm kind of knocking it out of the park, it's those moments where I'm probably living truest to the values and the things that are important to me and able to make space for the things I love, the people I care about, and enjoy my life. Have a moment to pause, breathe, reflect, and actually practice gratitude for it.
So do you believe that the concept of balance is realistic, or is it a myth?
It's, I think, a myth and a hard one for women. I mean, I think that it implies that all of the things in our lives, work, family, friendship, self-care, can somehow come to have equal weight. And they really never can, right? If you choose to prioritize one, you have to give something else up. So I really think it's about having flexibility, giving yourself some grace, and just accepting the fact that if you're going to really succeed at something, something else will be sacrificed. It doesn't mean there's not times that you can prioritize that other thing that you let go of, but it's really hard to imagine doing it all. And I think the folks that say they are doing it all are not really being honest with themselves. I think it's really exhausting to try to hold that up. And I think it's much easier when you recognize that it's okay to not be great at something sometimes because you had to make a choice.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. It became very difficult for me when I became a mother. Mm-hmm. I thought everything would be okay. Like I had a schedule set. The schedule went down the drain as soon as I became a mom. There was no way I can actually have a set schedule because you don't know where things come up from. Like things actually happen. Life happens. My mom always tells me that life happens, and now I know.
Yeah, children don't know your schedule and they don't follow it, and they like to develop their own schedules, and then if you have more than one, then you're managing two schedules, and then if you have a partner, they also maybe did not get the memo about your schedule. So it all becomes just a matter of letting go of certain things, making peace with certain things, and deciding what matters on a daily basis, and often on a moment-to-moment basis. I mean, and when they're really little, it's so unpredictable, but really I find each stage and phase of my kid's life, there's different challenges where that emerges.
How does societal expectations differ for women and based on race, class, or cultural background, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am sitting here as a person of privilege, and many of the choices that I've been able to make in my life have been associated with that privilege. For instance, if I worried about my economic stability, I had a home I could go back to. Not that I wanted to move back and be with my parents. That would not have always been my first choice. I had that option. Many people don't have that option. I think the opportunities available to women and men definitely have an intersectional nature. I think as a newcomer in a place like Calgary, you face tremendous barriers and challenges that I likely, particularly at your age, took for granted and didn't even give a second thought to. And it continues to be one of those things where I can often sit back and say, wow, I'm so lucky. I had a child, for instance, that had some really severe complexities with speech, with occupational therapy, with physical therapy. But because I knew the system, I knew how to get grants and supports for him. And I remember encountering a mother whose child had the same sort of thing, and she said, like, I don't even know where to start. They tell me it's my responsibility, but I don't even understand this, right? So I think that there are so many elements and layers to that, and even the concept of balance is really a privileged concept. It's a concept that really only people with the time to talk about it can even really consider it, in my mind, right?
You previously mentioned that there's oftentimes no balance as a woman in life, and that oftentimes you also have to sacrifice. In your experience as a mother and a professor, what sacrifices or trade-offs have you faced?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I started my career out of my master's working for the government, which what I thought was my dream job. I would get a lot of really interesting work. I would get to travel. It offered great opportunities for progression. But what I realized quite quickly, knowing that I wanted to have children, was that, it appeared that there was great flexibility, there really wasn't. And that happened when I was working in my office in Vancouver, and I saw a new manager come in, and all of a sudden, in particular, the women in my office had to transform their lives. We had a manager who liked to work from 8 to 4. Many of them were working from 7 to 3, and he said, that's not how I work. And, I remember I was quite young at the time. I didn't have kids, but I remember that it was really difficult for them at that time to kind of negotiate what their childcare would look like, how they could change their lives and still work to support their families. And so that was really a pivotal moment for me because it made me decide I wanted something different. I wanted something with some flexibility. I knew I wanted to be around my children when they were young, and I didn't want that access to when and how I got to spend time with my kids to be dictated by changes in leadership to a large extent. So that's when I made a choice to go back and get my PhD, because I also knew that the minute I had children, I would likely not be very interested in writing a dissertation because I would be looking at these beautiful little babies going, why would I write a thesis when I can be giving this beautiful baby a cuddle? So for me, that was one of those moments where I really had to make a choice. And again, I think there's a very strong gender dimension to that. I'm not sure that if I had not been thinking about childcare already for children I did not have until almost 8 years later, I would have made that choice. And again, after finishing my PhD, I was really limited by the options I had too. I made some really strong decisions to work part-time because I knew I wanted to be present with my kids. And part of it was also the cost of childcare. And because my partner had not been out of the workforce, we were doing the calculations and it made more sense for him to continue working. So again, I think those are the kinds of decisions where you have to make some choices in your life. I do sometimes think that doors open to you in a particular way at moments in time in your life that are meant to be. I would not trade my journey for even a moment. and I love my job. I've loved it. I look at some of the folks who started at the same time, they're still friends, some of them, and I never go, wow, I sure wish I'd stayed. So, but again, even as an academic, I've had to make some choices about where I've been and what I've chosen to do based on having children. So again, working part-time, I couldn't just pick a job anywhere. If a job opened up, it's not easy to move kids, particularly if you have a child who has some complexities. The supports are great in Alberta, so we were really limited to where we lived. So again, some choices that I had to make that had I not had children and had I not been thinking and probably constructed childcare and the decisions about childcare as my responsibility would have been quite different.
Do you feel women get penalized for choosing family or for choosing their career or even trying to do both?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work world, I think, but I also think men are penalized when they do it too. I think that the work world prioritizes as much work as you can give, efficiency, productivity, and that's not conducive to having a family. You know, when meetings are scheduled, how meetings are scheduled, what kind of expectations your work has, all of those kinds of things are not something that that it's easy for people who work for other people to set boundaries on. I study entrepreneurship, and I think that is oftentimes one of the reasons that people turn to entrepreneurship is it gives them some of the flexibility to do those sorts of things. That said, you know, yesterday I was presenting about just sort of the recent statistics in entrepreneurship in Alberta, and they were saying that, you know, women entrepreneurs, their biggest motivation used to be to make a difference in the world, and now it's to earn a high living, right? And that's to support their families because they have much higher caregiving commitments. And we're also starting to see evidence of the sandwich generation, right? Where they're caring for their children and they're caring for their aging parents. So they're really stuck. And again, traditional workplaces often don't have any allowances for that.
Is that idea of having it all empowering, or do you think it's like a capitalist trait that keeps women overextended?
Absolutely keeps women overextended because, I mean, we live in this time where, you know, social media does make us envy everybody, and we present these curated versions of life where people do look like they're knocking it out of the park at work, going on these beautiful vacations with their family, having time with their friends, incorporating fitness, you know, doing all of those things, right? So if you watch someone's feed, we're constantly bombarded by people who look like they are able to do that, and people continue to curate those images because that's where they also get likes and validation. So I think we get caught in a cycle around those sorts of things where, particularly because the lives of others that we look at and that we think we see are not authentic, but they feel authentic. And they're often a reminder of what we are not achieving.
Yeah, it's a problem with social media because it's defining success and fulfillment in a very specific way, and it's not really a realistic way per se, not for anyone, to be honest. What would it look like to redefine success or for fulfillment on our own terms, do you think?
I think just reminding people that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to fail. Not every day will be great. And if you have a great day at work, it likely might mean that you might not have as great of a day with your kids. Like just to recognize that that if you are trying for it all to be wonderful all the time, you're likely bound to be disappointed. But if you can roll with it, you can be flexible, and you can realize that you'll likely have just glimmering moments of brilliance in one of those moments, and just give yourself a little grace, you'll do a lot better. So I think flexibility and, you know, resilience are much better things to strive for. and to let go of the desire to always be great at everything.
Has your definition of success shifted over time? And if so, how?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, I've come much more into starting to determine my values and to say no to things that aren't authentic to the things that really reflect the life I want to lead. And part of that is as I age, I lose energy and capacity to work at the same level I did. So I have to make choices. But it's also incredibly liberating because you really do realize the power of positive boundary making, rest, rejuvenation, and prioritization. So for me, I did get caught up in particular notions of success, but I really thought, oh, I maybe want to be a full professor or I want to be this. But then when I wasn't doing that, I looked at the people around me and I thought they don't get to spend their time with their kids. They don't get to go in those classrooms and volunteer with them. They don't get those moments, and those are more important to me. So again, it's really deciding what are core to your values. And I would often go back to, why did I do this PhD? I didn't do this PhD because I wanted status. I did it because I wanted flexibility in my life and to be able to do things I knew I was good at and something I loved. And so as long as I am still doing that, it doesn't matter if it's measured by external success factors.
What messages did you receive growing up about what women should want or achieve?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. My mom was raised in a time where, the images that were there to women, like, women never asked for help, right? There was never a sign. She never grew up seeing women who asked for help, had support. Women sort of either did not work or managed to manage it all, right? I think we're getting better at some of those representations, but I think for my mom, an important message, and this really came from her own history, was you need to be able to be independent and have something that you love that's for you, so you're not dependent on someone else. And that really came from her own mother, who felt, I think, really trapped. Both my grandmothers felt very trapped in lives because they were dependent on their husbands, one living on a farm in a life she did not love, and the other just as a housewife, when really what she wanted to do was work at Sears and sell pretty shoes and dresses and things like that, but that's not what women did. So I think that the message they gave their daughters, so the message my mom received was, don't be dependent on someone. And so I think that was really it. That did, my mom was devastated when I left my good government job, because that was another thing. Get a great job, get a job that's stable, that's sturdy, that will give you a pension, all of those kinds of things. So that was a really difficult decision that I made that my mom did not, my mom in particular was really worried, but I really knew in my heart that if I did what I loved, I felt like success would come, and I've kind of always remained true to that. If I did something that I really felt passionate about and I felt was contributing to the world, it would work itself out.
I think times have definitely changed in terms of how that's all defined, and also in the fact that we're not depending on men. We are also independent individuals, but then also when we are in relationships and have children, that we do have a support system where there is some type of balance where I can depend on someone of taking care of something for me while I'm doing work. But what does support look like for mothers in professional settings, and where does it fall short?
Yeah, childcare is a huge one. For me, particularly if you want to work at all part-time, I think we have a great system if you have money. because there's all sorts of places that will take your children. But if you don't have money or you want some flexibility in that, I think that that's an area that falls incredibly short. So I remember, for instance, when my youngest was very little, my parents really enjoyed taking him, and then they wanted to travel a bit. And I said, of course, please do. I wanted to still continue teaching, and I thought it would really be easy to find childcare. And it was a huge challenge. And I remember when my son started preschool, I got an email from a mom saying, hey, I'm really stuck here. I need someone to help me pick my child up. My husband will come and get my child. It's just this hour. And my heart went out to her. So, of course, I said yes. Now, of all the moms there, I was the one that worked. There were many that stayed at home and things of that sort. But I just thought she won't find anyone. It's so hard. And so I think that that's it. The other thing I did is I found great babysitters, and I would get them to come and support me in the times that I felt were really difficult. So it's very true that children have witching hours, and my children are quite close in age. So oftentimes between 4 to 6, even when I was home making dinner, I would get a sitter to come and stay with my kids. So when I was at my worst time sort of emotionally, there was someone else there to give them the attention that they needed, because they were also not at their best time emotionally. So I think finding the support, and that's really one thing that I really discovered, is the moms that need that find each other. And I have had various moms along the way, and sometimes dads, we've just sort of been there for each other in those moments. Recognizing that at times our own parents might not be able to fill those roles if they're far away, or they're traveling, or they're not present, or you don't have a good relationship with them. So yeah, so I think we've gotten a little bit better at doing that now. But there's also a lot of judgment around that, who you leave your kids with, when you have to ask for help. And I don't think there ever should be. I think we should celebrate asking for help. And I think we should celebrate our children being exposed to different ways of care, because then they learn. They learn what they appreciate, what they like, what is hard for them, and you learn about them in different ways too.
In our previous episode, it was with my ex-husband, and we were discussing that exact topic, actually. Something that we had to go through is when he left for work, he was the provider and he went to work. But if I went to work, I was the bad person who is basically leaving their child behind, even though we were both providing to that same child. Have you had to make sacrifices, and how did you reconcile them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is definitely that idea. I think many women, and there's lots of really interesting research about it, like COVID laid that all to bear in probably the most extreme of ways. And in our household, even though we all experienced COVID, the person who experienced COVID in the worst way possible was me, because it was trying to manage the transition of my students who had their own challenges and stresses, the team I managed at work, so of instructors who had tremendous stresses and pressures, and then my children. And probably the time that was really difficult is I felt like my partner had always worked from home, so nothing in his life changed. He just went into his office and did his regular thing. And I sort of felt so jealous because he could just go in, close the door, work, and there was this chaos around me daily, my disruption of my life, and it just really reminded me. And sometimes that is a tension that I feel. I feel like he is so used to being singularly focused on work that multitasking and thinking of all the other things that need to happen just is not the way his brain works, and that can be challenging.
How can we make space for women to define fulfillment on their own terms?
I think For women, I think the work that is helpful to do is to just decide what are your non-negotiables. So I have a couple. I do a fitness class every week, and it's not because it's the best fitness class there is, say, for my all the things I should be working on, but it is because it brings me so much joy. I've been doing it for 9 years with the same instructor. I brought my kids when they were little to the class. They would run around, they would have fun there. And, it has always been my non-negotiable. Anytime somebody tries to book something there or tries to ask something of me, I'll just say, no, I'm not busy. And there are many times I don't even really want to go when I'm trying to get myself out the door to go. Like if I'm really tired, I might think, oh, but there has never been a time, and that's what I remind myself, when I've gone where I haven't come back and my heart hasn't been filled with joy. Because I meet with this regular group of women once, and sometimes there's another class, but I'm a little bit more flexible. Sometimes I'll miss it. But my, Tuesday or Thursday night class, I've just never missed. It's been really important to me. So making sure that and that it's okay to have some of those boundaries. I remember I was listening to I think it was a fitness influencer or something. It might have been Jillian Michaels. And she's like, what kind of model do you show for your children if you can never show them that you're allowed to take time for yourself? Right? Like, is that really, like, if you show your children, for instance, even if you're working out at home and you show them that you care about, taking care of your body, is that not more important than being with them every moment, right? And it was a really good thing for me because sometimes when I doubt myself, and my kids did go through a phase where they'd be like, don't go, please tuck me in, because it was always at their bedtime, right? And that was a brief phase, but then they got used to it, right? And I said, oh, this is something that's really important to me because I want them to give themselves permission to have things that are important to them. That they can say no to other people and they can still have a great relationship with those people. That saying yes to everything doesn't necessarily have to be the only way to have a good relationship with someone.
I remember when I said I wanted to get a divorce, everyone said I was being selfish and that I should stay in the divorce for the sake of my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I remembered when you go on a plane and they say, please put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Yeah. Before you're able to help someone else. And I realized that the reason they say that to someone is because you can't help someone if you're not actually alive yourself.
Absolutely. And again, that's a metaphor for life, but we do have this model that's sort of being present and with your children all the time, and it's become so much crazier now, like for parents. Like, my parents used to put us on a ski bus when we were little and we'd go and we'd ski without them, or they'd drop us at the Southland Leisure Center and we'd swim, and we were young, right? But now parents go so many places with their children. I really like independence in my children, but for instance, my child is one of the only ones that takes public transit. He loves public transit. I have a phone, I track him, we have rules over it, but people are amazed. But he's 13, and I sort of think at 13, he should be allowed to take public transit on his own, but he is literally the only one in his peer group who does that. And it's amazing to me because we somehow equate success in parenting with constant attention on children. And I actually do think we're doing a disservice. I think if we let go of that a little bit, our children would be happier and we would feel a little bit more relaxed and we would feel a little bit less pressure.
Yeah, I feel like as mothers and as women, we are helping them to thrive on their own.
Yes, we want them to feel confident and empowered enough to know that they'll be okay on their own, and to know that if they have a problem, so my son knows he can reach me if there's a problem on the train, and he knows the protocols if there's a problem, but I don't want him to be so afraid to go in the world that he needs my validation on things. I want him to be able to make good choices, and I think if he can start that younger, that's good. And I mean, he's been doing that since he's been experimenting with taking buses and public transit since he's been 11 because he's really interested in it. My other son would probably have me chauffeur him for the rest of his life, but he also sees the validation we give my older son for that independence, and that's really transforming the way he approaches things too.
So what do you think the structural changes that are needed to be given to women so they're able to also thrive on their own in that case?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I think we do tell women, go get your degrees, do these sorts of things, and that it will all work itself out. But I think the challenges of actually trying to manage it all will require sacrifices, and you will feel that. So I think being a bit more realistic about what your expectations are and encouraging women to start thinking about like what are their non-negotiables, and measuring their success in their life by the values and the things that are important to them becomes much more important. I also believe if we had no social media, we might be better as a society in general, but I realize that will not happen. So, but you know, that's another thing with my kids. My one son does have a phone, but he has nothing on it except the ability to use a transit app and call us. And my other son in grade 6 is the only child in his class without a phone. And, you know, for me, one of the things I say to him all the time is you're going to have an entire life ahead of you where you carry a device that will have you tethered to it. Enjoy your time now where you don't, right? So I think taking a break from all of those things is beneficial for everyone, not just women. But I also do think we need to really think about how we structure work, how we give space to breaks. I think we need to be much more transparent about salaries. I teach negotiation purposefully to students for that reason. And you know, one of the things I often say in negotiations is not talking about salaries really only benefits corporations. It does not benefit people, right? It doesn't benefit employees because it allows for things like gender gaps to persist because nobody knows until they somehow find out, right? But if we're transparent about those things and everybody is committed to creating spaces that are equitable and fair, it becomes a very different sort of area. But organizations are smart. They know that creating a culture of secrecy around benefits, around pay, around all of those things is beneficial to them because they can perpetuate inequity instead of creating an environment where people are transparent about what's going on and what equity really looks like.
I would like you to look at your camera, please, and give a final message to women who are trying to have it all, who are being influenced by social media, unfortunately, to have it all, and to basically live off that myth of balance.
Yeah, I guess my big message to them would be is to just be gentle with yourself. Decide on what's really important to you. And when you feel like you're losing track of that, come back to it. And again, for me, it was really about wanting the time and space to have a flexible life, to be with my kids. Travel was a big part of it, and I get that with the current career I have. So decide on those things, and when you get overwhelmed by watching other people's life, come back to it. Make sure you're living sort of true to the values and the things that are important to you. And then that stuff might not seem as shiny and desirable as the beautiful life you have. And also just give yourself some grace and kindness and self-compassion because you are doing a great job and you do matter and you are important. And try to talk to yourself as you would your very best friend. I think that's another thing, that self-compassion is really rooted in kindness to yourself. We're our own worst critic, but we would never speak to the people we love that way. So try to talk to yourself in a way that you would talk to someone you love. So love yourself.
Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. I truly appreciate it. Today's conversation reminds us that having it all may not be a universal goal, and it certainly isn't a fair one. It's layered with assumptions, often rooted in privilege, and almost always demands invisible labor from women. But perhaps instead of chasing balance, we can choose alignment. What matters to you? What brings you peace? What do you want to be? And how do you want to live? Thank you to Dr. Amanda Williams for her openness and insight. And thank you for watching and listening. If you're navigating your own version of having it all or redefining what that means, I see you. Until next time, stay curious and stay critical.